Do U.S. laws stop at the border, or do they follow people wherever they go in the world? Because the answer to that question may explain more about the Epstein investigation than any other headline you've seen this week. Hey, Meg.
Hey, Ken.
Let's get into it. What do you think? Why did you want to talk about this?
Well, this morning I was asking you how, because of Prince Andrew getting arrested,
right?
How does this all work? Is it like in America's jurisdiction, or is it in like Europe? Like, how does all of that, how do they all work together internationally? You know, like, and then it made me think about us going to Poland in the summer. And then it, made me think about, what do we have to think about as U.S. citizens, even beyond the Epstein files? What do we have to think about if we're going on vacation and we're not in our country? Like, you get arrested. Do you go to the embassy? Can you call your American lawyer? How does this work?
Yeah. So with anything, like I always say, we always have to break it down into, what are we talking about? Is it in the criminal court system, or is it in the civil court system? And so what we're talking about right now is criminal laws and how they follow you around. And you mentioned Prince Andrew. And so there's a lot of confusion or misinformation about what actually went on with him previously and what this was this week on it.
Well, I heard he is no longer a prince. All of his money was taken away. He probably was spanked. Oh, that's bad. No, that sounds dirty. I just meant like not given a full, like
a slap on the wrist.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Slap on the wrist. Can we? He was slapped on the wrist. And so what I had you look that up, because there's a lot of things that circulate that I try to figure out if it's real or not. And I've gotten myself mixed up in posting things that weren't accurate. So can you tell me and tell everybody else what you find out?
Yeah. So
about that?
First of all, with the background on it, he was sued civilly. He was sued for some sort of sexual misconduct. I don't know the exact allegations on it, but he was sued and settled that lawsuit. It's kind of confidential, although the rumors are that it was in the $12 million range.
So did that have to do anything with the Epstein files, that particular
It
one?
was related to his conduct with the whole Epstein debacle. And I don't know the specifics of that lawsuit. I don't know if it was his conduct on the island or what, but he was sued by somebody related to sexual misconduct. That was a civil lawsuit that involved only money damages. It did not have any governmental involvement, and the rumors about him being stripped of his title and losing his money and losing his inheritance and all that, that has nothing to do with that lawsuit.
But did it happen?
So
inquiring minds want to know, did that happen?
He's still a prince.
Okay.
He still has his money. What happened was the royal family internally made a decision that he shouldn't represent the family in governmental positions or out in the public. So they pulled him back. But he's still a prince. He still has his money. He still has his property. That was no governmental involvement there at all.
Ah.
So that leads us to, okay, what happened this week? What was the whole headline and the issue with him this week? Was that civil? Was that criminal? What is it?
I know, because I asked you, I said he was arrested this week. From what everybody's saying is like, oh, yay, something's moving because he was arrested in the Epstein files and because he was connected to that. What did you find out?
So it was a detention by law enforcement in Great Britain to question him. He wasn't officially arrested and he wasn't officially charged with anything yet. But what's going on is, and this is what I've discerned from what's been released. What's going on is he's being questioned about leaking governmental information that was confidential that has come out through the latest document dump on the Epstein files. So it's not that they're looking into any sexual allegations against him to charge him criminally. They're going this route of disclosing private information when he was a public official at the time.
And then you reminded me that one of the mafia guys was arrested for tax evasion, because you were saying something like it's easier to arrest them on something that's more basic and then they can get into other things.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you've told me that you've seen online on social media is the growing frustration about why isn't anything happening? Why aren't they charging people? When are the arrests going to happen? There's the big document dumps. What are they doing with that? When's it really going to start hitting the fan with people losing their positions of prominence and power? And this brought up what's going on with Prince Andrew and reminded me of Al Capone. So what they're doing is they're going through the documents and seeing what they can actually charge people with that is provable. When you're talking about sexual misconduct, sexual allegations from decades ago, those are already very difficult cases, even if they happened last week. You've got witness credibility, victim credibility issues. You've got documentation issues.
Statute of limitations.
You've got statutes of limitation, all of that. No, great point. And we're talking about things that happened decades and decades ago. It's extremely hard for them to prove those cases. So that's why we're not seeing anything really move on the criminal front. And so with this latest document dump, they're seeing actual documents, emails, communications, probably from Prince Andrew to other people, including, but maybe not limited to, Epstein, where they have documented evidence of him disclosing state secrets. So they can charge him with that. That's really, and you think about Al Capone, they couldn't get him on all of the mob, the murder, all those different things. What they eventually got him on was tax evasion. So they have to find something that's provable and go with that.
Well, as just a person in her home, I'm not out there in the government or CIA or anything like that. At least you don't know I am. Just kidding. It just feels like things look obvious. So you're sitting at home and you're like, when are they going to start arresting people? This seems so obvious. And it reminded me of people that we know that have maybe had a restraining order. And it seems so obvious this person is being so terrible and they're harassing them and they're showing up places. But it almost feels like the law protects them more than they protect you, because they have to do something X number of times before you can even do something. I mean, I feel like, isn't that the case? It just reminds me of it just feels like it's all talk. It's all like everyone's just saying, oh, we can't do anything. But really, can they?
I totally get that. The issue is this. A lot of times when you're saying things like that, oh, it's so obvious. Oh, why can't they go get them? There's a lot of emotion behind that. And the emotion says, this is the way it feels like. This is what obviously went on behind the scenes. The law can't go on that emotion. The law can only go on actual provable facts. And so there's a lot of legal hair splitting that ends up happening. These are the elements of this crime. What facts apply to this element? Well, this one did. Great. I've got something that I can prove on this element, but I have all this emotion and feeling about the next element. But where are my provable facts? Where's the witness testimony? Where's the documentary evidence? Where's the videotapes? Where is something that I can hang my hat on and say, okay, I can prove that next element, and then move on to the next element? And if you don't have all those elements lined up legally, you can't move forward with the criminal prosecution.
Well, I think that's what makes everybody so mad, because there are a lot of videos. I mean, you see these videos where there's the victims dancing blacked out, but they know who's in that video with them. There's a lot of videos. How come those people aren't getting arrested?
So, and I haven't seen those videos, and I'm not planning on watching those videos, but you have to prove that those videos happen at that place, at that time. The person who's the victim has to be cooperating, alive and cooperating, and saying that was against my will. They have to be able to point the finger and say, this person was in the room. In every case.
So these people could be dead because they murdered them and tortured them after. So there's not a lot of witnesses. But
sure.
But you can still be arrested on that, right? Like, even though there's not someone saying, yes, this is what happened, that you mean they could just, wait, see? No.
It's hair splitting, I'm telling you.
Okay, so they tortured, they died.
Right.
Isn't there any other avenue that they can go to arrest them?
Depends on what the evidence is. You've got to follow the evidence always. And keep in mind, again, I'm talking about the difference between a civil case and a criminal case. When you're talking about these things, sexual exploitation, torture, murder, you're talking about criminal, you have to have a very high standard. You have to prove them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil cases like the Prince Andrew settlement, that's just a preponderance of the evidence. So his lawyers look at it and say, you could end up paying a lot more money, settle, get out of it, because who knows which way it tips. But in those types of things, what's the evidence that they have? Yes, somebody is dead. Do they have DNA evidence? Do they have fingerprint evidence? Do they have witness testimony? Do they have videos? Do they have documentation? What do they have where they can prove not just the person was murdered, but who did it? And can they prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to bring a criminal prosecution?
So let's say there's a video and they're watching person A and they have the name and they're still alive right now, murdering somebody in the Epstein files it's a nameless person. They can't immediately just go and arrest them in the video showing that.
So that would be pretty compelling evidence. That would probably be something that prosecutors would say, I see this person, I can identify that it is this person, I can say where it's happening, when it's happening, and I think I have enough to charge them. Their view is always going to be not just do I have enough to get them charged, but will I be able to convict them of it? Because a lot of times prosecutors, and as a former prosecutor, I did this thousands of times, you look at a case and you say, I probably got enough to charge them, but I may not have enough to get this through to trial and get a conviction on it. Is it worth that? So there's a lot of that going on as well.
Yeah, that's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, it really can be. And so that brings up that question that we were talking about initially, because we're talking about these allegedly criminal acts that happen on the Epstein Island. How does the U.S. have any jurisdiction? How does the Department of Justice, how does our law enforcement do anything about that?
And how do they?
Well, so
I don't know, Ken, enlighten us.
Yeah, you've got to look at what the nexus is between the United States and the criminal act happening somewhere beyond our borders. In this case, we're in great shape because Epstein Island was in the U.S. Virgin Islands, so it's a territory of the United States. So that's enough right there. United States laws apply there. But when we're talking about the broader question of, let's say it was not part of the U.S. Virgin Islands, it was not a U.S. territory, how would the government get involved? How would we charge somebody criminally with that? And so the nexus would be there has to be some significant connection to the United States. Maybe it was recruiting sex victims in the United States, flights leaving from the United States to carry out criminal activity elsewhere that invokes the interstate and foreign commerce clause, where that's a reason that the government can get involved. There's just a lot of things where the U.S. can criminalize that behavior and get jurisdiction, but not everything. Hey, real quick, if you're new here, my name is Ken Gerber, and I run Gerber Injury Law here in Phoenix, Arizona. If you've been hurt in an accident, I want you to hear me clearly. The insurance company is not on your side. They have lawyers working for them from day one. You deserve the same. At my firm, we take on car accidents, slip and falls, and all types of personal injury cases across Arizona. And here's what I tell every single client. You pay nothing unless we win. No upfront costs, no risk, just me and my team fighting hard to get you what you're actually owed. If you've been injured, don't wait and don't settle cheap. Give us a call. The consultation is completely free, and I'll personally make sure we take care of you. All right, back to the show.
So as just a lay person at home, and I'm reading this stuff, and I'm a mom, and I'm a business owner and wife, and everyone just keeps talking about, like, why aren't we talking about this more? And, I really hesitated the other day because it's like, I don't feel like I can do anything, right? I don't feel like I'm going to be able to go and get these people arrested. What am I doing? And at the same time, I thought, well, silence has kept this going. But at the same time, again, what am I going to do about it? Just be a parrot and just talk about my complaints and what I find to be disgusting. And, the more that I thought about it, I thought, it really comes back to what we've been talking about this whole time, many segments of the podcast is discernment at home. A lot of these people that become victims, whether it's through Hollywood or, these people that we know that say, they sell their soul to the devil or whatever, it starts at home in these little things that they're willing to do, whether it starts with pornography, as Christians, where do these people, how can they feel like they can make an impact where this is such a big sex ring? This is so big out there, right? But where can we maybe make a difference at home? That's where I wanted to focus. And don't you agree that there's something we can do at home to help maybe teach our kids discernment when it comes to sex and their bodies and things like that?
I think you have to. I think that has to be where it starts because like we've said all along, it's this slippery slope. It doesn't start with people eating babies and committing heinous sex acts. It starts with just a step in that direction of, being showing sexually explicit movies and TV shows, stepping into pornography and making that acceptable. Just a little step at a time, and eventually sin will continue on in that direction. And so you've got to, exactly what you're saying, you've got to start on the defense with your children, not shielding them, not bubbling them. And I think you're huge about that. And I applaud that if you want to address that.
No, absolutely. I feel like if you try to make the world protect your kids and not teach them, and you're more concerned about the school being a certain way, or, everything that they watch at their friend's house has to be a certain way, your kids are going to grow up and have this all in front of their faces. So you have to teach them discernment. Who are they deeply? What do they believe? And they are going to make up their own decisions. They have free will. They're their own human beings. But I think that we need to be more present every single day. And we need to teach them. There are people that are so addicted to the addiction of things of this world that they do eventually, like them, get to a point where it's not good enough to have enough money and power. They need to be hurting other people.
But how do you practically, we said that a number of times in past podcasts. How do you practically address that with the kids? When it comes up and it's, something sexually explicit in a movie, or it's somebody talking about pornography in a public place to them. How do you specifically address that with our kids?
Well, we are always in the Bible and we're always praying and we're always talking about what Jesus believes of us and who we are. And so we also talk about sin and what does that look like? And so I think that we naturally do it. It's like you walk into the mall and you're like, cover your eyes. There's a set of boobies right there because it's Victoria's Secret. You can't avoid it. You really can't. You're in a store and there's magazines in front of you. And I think that naturally as a mom, you're like, oh, I could have done without seeing that. Didn't need to see that part of their body. And I think that that starts the conversation. Well, what do you mean? It's not that big of a deal. It's cute. Well, it may be cute. However, she should be more respectful of, does she not understand that she's basically showing off her body to all of these men that don't deserve to see her in that much skin? And it's just more even too about respecting yourself.
Yeah, and explaining really where the evils of that exploitation can lead.
And teaching men, and when they're boys,
Without
you should
a doubt.
be looking at women respectfully.
Sure, absolutely. I love that. So back to the Epstein document dump, one of the things that we talked about is, okay, so what if they arrest somebody for disclosing state secrets, or there's, Al Capone with the tax evasion? Why is that a big deal? Why does that help and do anything? And that's one of the things that we were talking about that I wanted to make sure that we pointed out here, is that you have to keep in mind, there's a lot of pressure that the government can put on people when they've been charged with a crime. And so when you're talking about those videos and how come they can't just charge X, Y, and Z, and I said there's not enough evidence. Well, get somebody who's a potential witness in one of those charged with something else. And now you say to that person, look, maybe we don't have to proceed with this prosecution. Maybe we can go lighter on you because that's not, really what they're ultimately after. You get them to turn state's evidence. Testify against this guy and we'll drop that charge. That's what we see every day in every criminal court across the country. You see informants turn state's evidence. And so that's the ultimate goal in reviewing those documents. If they don't have something blatant about it, they got to try and find something and see what else they can come up with.
But it seems like there's a lot of blatant things in there.
Yeah.
But that's just me reading these things going, wow, it's obvious. That's how a lot of people feel. It just seems so obvious.
Well, and that goes back to what I was saying. The obvious nature of the emotion doesn't mean that it necessarily fits in the specific legal elements to actually have the charge come through and get convicted. So.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yesterday was a crazy day. We were talking about, I saw that they were posting about the RFK Jr. talking about needing mandatory vaccines to be studied more.
Right.
And I was sharing my personal experience as a mom. We're all pressured to, everybody has to be vaccinated. Everybody has to be vaccinated. And not all bodies are the same. And
such a hot button topic for people.
Well, it is because I think they created it to be a hot button topic. Because if you say I'm allergic to penicillin, no one blinks an eye. Oh, that's awful. What do you take? I'm allergic to peanuts. Oh, what do you have, an EpiPen? But the second you say, I can't have vaccines because my body does not handle them, you're awful. You're anti-vax.
Right.
How dare most moms that were pro-vax are now anti-vax because their child was injured or something happened in their lives where, people want to say, well, it wasn't the vaccine. The vaccine triggered an immune response. Okay, so the peanut triggered an immune response and you can't breathe. It doesn't matter. Jack was, and I've told the story before, at his 6-month visit, he went to go see his doctor and he was testing out as a 9-month-old. At 6 months old, he was saying, Ma, Da, he was doing push-ups.
You were a brand new mom at that point.
32
trusting
years
the
old,
system,
writing everything down. I never even thought that vaccines could ever cause any injury. And he had all of his 6-month vaccinations. He became glassy-eyed, fever, give the Tylenol, ibuprofen back to back from fevers. And that glassiness never went away. That was a Wednesday. By the Monday after, I called them and said, Jack is disappeared. He's not the child that I've known for the last 6 months. And they said, okay, bring him in. And his doctor actually was shocked and said, Megan, he's testing out as a 2-month-old. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? What do you mean he's testing out as a 2-month-old? Well, he clearly had a reaction to the vaccines. Okay, but is this going to go away next week? When is this going to go away? It may never go away. And you're like, it took me 5 years to get pregnant with Jack. We did artificial insemination. I had prayed for having him, and now you're telling me because you guys gave him vaccines? I have to pause for a minute.
Yeah. It's still upsetting after all this time. It really is.
You're telling me that you guys gave him something and now he's a 2-month-old and you don't know if he's going to ever be better?
Right.
It was so awful as a mom because I felt like I failed.
Well, and like you said, you were not anti-vax at the time. You were trusting the doctors, trusting the system. This is one of the most frustrating things.
And then I couldn't talk about it because then I'm an idiot.
Right.
And how dare you ask any questions? And clearly it wasn't vaccination. So not only are you dealing with something so scary in your life, because literally everybody has a calendar that says my child rolled over, my child did this, my child did that. Literally go back to month 2 and you miss your baby. You're like, okay, you literally know every smile, every smirk, everything. And then not only can you not talk about it, you're shamed for blaming the very thing that changed, the catalyst at that moment. You're not allowed to say, my child was injured by vaccines.
Right.
You might not be. I'm not going to be deadly ill from peanuts, but someone else may be. And so that's the part that I think in America, It's so heartbreaking because you have parents suffering in silence because they're shamed, they're mocked, they're told they're stupid. Yesterday, I had somebody say awful things to me, that I'm stupid and F you and this and you're a liar. I had somebody say, give me your kid's medical records, you liar. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You have a parent that literally feels like they and now, mind you, Jack is wonderful. I love Jack. Thank God we learned the things to help him succeed in life.
Amazing child.
And so thank God those things we were able to, with help and change those things around. And God obviously has a big plan for Jack. I in his own way, not that children that don't, every child God has a purpose for. And so, it's just awful because you feel so attacked. And so with RFK Jr., you have a lot of pro-vax people saying he's not smart, and it gets frustrating.
Right. And one of the things that's frustrating is there's the whole debate on the overview level. Are vaccines safe or are they not safe? And there's all these procedures that they go through, but down on the very personal level, a new mom walks into their pediatrician with their new baby, and the pediatrician almost acts like it's not even a choice and says, okay, it's time for vaccinations. Yeah. We're going to do X, Y, and Z vaccinations today.
Oh yeah.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the vaccinations. Yeah. And a mom may say, okay, well, are they safe? And the doctor's response more often than not is, they're perfectly safe.
Yeah.
And that's not true. If that statement's made, that's an untrue statement, because there's no such thing as a perfectly safe vaccine. And when it comes down to it, with vaccine trials and with getting them approved, they're just making a decision. Are the benefits, in their opinion, do they outweigh the risks? And if in their opinion, these committees, these governmental entities, if they determine the benefits outweigh the risks, they approve the vaccines. But that doesn't equate to vaccines are safe. And another thing that you brought up, that you mentioned with people attacking you, is they call the story anecdotal. Well, that's just anecdotal. You can't say that vaccines are unsafe because of an anecdotal story. And they're missing the point of a medical expert, a medical doctor gives his opinion within a short amount of time that this resulted from this incident. So you've got medical opinion testimony at that time within a short period of time. And all you need legally, you don't have to say that there wasn't any pre-existing condition or there wasn't any DNA or hereditary involvement. Matter of fact, that only adds to proving that it was caused by that, because we can have, in law, we can have two conjoining causes and still have that be the cause. It works in conjunction together. So it gets frustrating with this whole debate, and people really, really come down hard on one side or the other and say terrible things.
Well, and the more that I've studied our genetics, if you've ever heard of MTHFR, Jack has a mutation of, and I am not a doctor, but from what I've learned is, in layman's terms, we can't detox. So, you might have one child. I had vaccines a ton in the Navy. I'm a veteran. I had every vaccine in the world. I never even thought twice about vaccinations until this happened to Jack. And I don't think, like myself, I'm allergic to so many things. Well, we did some genetic testing, and it come to find out I don't detox. My body cannot detox well at all. Even one of the doctors said, your parents shouldn't have procreated because my body, it is so sensitive to everything, every chemical, everything, that I have to be very careful. And that also has pushed me towards doing things naturally. And I have learned a lot being forced to because of Jack, because after that happened, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't imagine giving Jack another vaccination. I had PTSD from it. I had to do EMDR over this.
Right.
I had to go see a therapist because for so many years I I just would not forgive myself for not understanding the risks involved. And, parents, if you're like, hey, I really want to do vaccinations, fine, go get a genetic test. See if your child's able to detox well. See if you're able to detox well. I see a doctor named Dr. Purser in Utah. He does online visits. He doesn't even know I'm saying his name. But, if you're also like, I'm a believer in vaccines, but I'm kind of scared, where is my child at? Do some genetic testing and things like that. But I think that we need to be able to talk about it without name calling. I think we should be able to say, if somebody were to say, I'm allergic to penicillin, no one's going to say anything. But the second you say, vaccines injure my child, F you, that's not true. How dare you? It's like, okay, well, if it's not, why is it such a big deal to argue and just close that door? Why can't we say these are the things that happen?
There's so much emotion wrapped in it. And people,
but why?
They end up identifying, and it's this tribalism that we come back to again and again. They come down and they're in the tribe of, I support science and I support the vaccines and I support that nothing can happen from them. That's their tribe. They're going to fight to the death for their tribe. Whereas you have other people whose eyes have been open and say, wait a minute, you're not being reasonable here in the conversation. This is what happened in our personal situation. They say, you can't prove that that's because of the vaccines. You can't say that he wouldn't have gotten some disease that caused the same thing. And that's what's going on. And it's not the vaccine, or it's already his latent DNA or genetic makeup that caused this in conjunction with the vaccines. All you're saying is, look at the overall evidence here. This can be proven with expert testimony based in time and proximity. This is what happened. And I'm not saying that it happens to everybody, but that's where the FDA and the vaccine companies and pharmaceuticals, they all look at the overview of the entire population and say, well, we think that it causes more good than it hurts people. And we're looking at it on an individual basis and saying, yeah, but it hurt us.
And then I was pregnant with Skyla, and you grew up in a family full of doctors that, do regular medicine. They're not naturopathic or anything. And you were concerned about not giving Skyla any vaccines.
Sure.
So I asked you, I said, can you, as a personal injury attorney, do me a favor and go research vaccine injury cases? Go out, and because this is such a serious subject to me that I can't imagine injecting Skyla. Like, I couldn't even bring myself to think about that. And you're her dad, so you get a say in that. And what did you find out? You looked at, I think, 30 plus cases.
Yeah.
And what did you end up, not scientifically, but what did you find out? Are there real injuries out there?
Well, yeah, absolutely there are. And it's difficult because starting from that position of saying, well, wait a minute, I don't know that I agree with not vaccinating our child. There's so much fear mongering. Well, what are you going to do if your child is the one that gets X disease and that causes horrible consequences? And so there's so much fear that's imparted on parents to try and protect their child. If you go and you look at vaccine injuries, yeah, they do happen. Yeah, they're out there. And the issue really comes down to this, to get scientific for just a minute from what I've understood. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. This is just my understanding of it, is they have to put things in the vaccines to make them stay in the body. With COVID, it was the spike protein. With
their adjuvants.
Their adjuvants. There's something that sticks. Years and years and years ago, they were using mercury. Why? Because mercury goes into the brain and the body can't get rid of it. So if they can attach the vaccine to something that the body can't get rid of, the body keeps that vaccination in for a longer time. What ends up happening is we found out much later, mercury is a neurotoxin and destroys the neurons in the brain and cause Mad Hatter's disease, a lot of neurological issues. And so mercury got outlawed, but they still have to use some kind of adjuvant. And you've talked about it, about the boosters. Why do people have to get boosters? And what does that mean if they don't get boosters
no,
or vaccines?
I know. I always, you know, we were at a dance class for Skyla. She was, I think, 3 years old. And one of the parents found out Skyla wasn't vaccinated and they all freaked out. And they're like, keep your daughter away from our daughters. I'm like, but are your kids vaccinated? Yes, but keep your unvaccinated kid away. I'm like, if I were worried, shouldn't I be the worried one? Like, your kids are vaccinated. And I asked the moms, I'm like, when was the last time you had a booster? They're like, what? When was the last time you had a booster? Because those not all vaccines last forever.
Right.
And they're like, I don't know. 20 years ago, I had a vaccine. It's like,
guess what?
Well, then you're not vaccinated either.
Right.
So all of these parents that are up in arms and yelling, when was your last booster?
Right.
When, you know, a lot of times, like I said, these don't last. You don't have lifetime immunity from
If you don't get a rabies vaccination for your dog every 3 years, you can't get a license for it. And they know that the vaccines don't last forever.
Correct.
They make you redo it. It's the same thing with people. The vaccines, they try as hard as they can with adjuvants to make them last, but they know that they don't last forever. And
Yeah.
you're exactly right. Those people who haven't gotten boosters are, for all intents and purposes, unvaccinated.
Yeah, they're vicious. And I just hope that if you are so confident in your vaccinations as being safe, you should be open to people speaking up and saying, my child was injured. And if you believe they're so safe, then you should say, okay, let me hear what happened. Why do you feel that they were injured by the vaccination? You know, Skyla, she wasn't vaccinated. And when we brought her in for her 1-year visit, she was talking up a storm. She was like saying 3-word, 4-word sentences. Her eyes were like bright and just going around. And you had these other kids, unfortunately, that seemed like they were in a fog. And I'm not blaming that, but it just, as a mom comparing having 2 kids, one vaccinated, one not, I just noticed a difference there. And I just, what can parents do legally, Ken, if they don't want to get a vaccination? You know, there's all these states that require it. Even if you can't even have you can't sign off because of
A religious objection to it.
Yeah, Arizona you can, but if they live in California or if they live in a state, they can't even homeschool sometimes without vaccinating.
Yeah.
Kids.
And so each state, each jurisdiction has its own laws, and they're going to have to research those laws. And I, by no means, am an expert across the country of these different laws. You say that California mandates it regardless and that they don't have a religious objection to it. I haven't researched that, so I don't know. But I would say, first and foremost, they need to look that up. They need to find out. They need to find out what objections there are. And this is going to implicate not just public safety laws with the vaccinations, but it brings in the First Amendment, your right to, freedom of religion. And if you religiously, your religion allows you to say, no, I don't want anything like that, then there's a clash of the laws. And so they've got to research in the jurisdiction where they are to find out what can they use, what do they have. And if they don't have it, and it's absolutely mandatory, their choices are fight it and take it to court and see if you can get a court to rule that it's unconstitutional, or start getting in touch with your legislators and getting that law changed.
Or they can move. Or if I had to live in that state, if this were me, I would definitely have a genetic test done on my kid. I would be reaching out to someone like Dr. Purser, who does genetic testing, but he can tell you, like, binders. There's a lot that is out there that you can help support the body, whether it's the liver, whether it's the kidneys. I would then be researching if my kid has to be vaccinated, and through the genetic testing, it shows that they have trouble detoxing. I would start researching, how do I protect them even though they have to have vaccinations?
Or even at the very least, find out if you have the argument to space out those childhood vaccinations. There are so many that we give the kids these days, and they're clearly having problems detoxing after them. Maybe they don't need however many of them, all at one time. Maybe there's a way to legally argue that you'll get them, but just let me space them out for my child. So there's time in between. There's not the overload of the proteins, et cetera, that may be causing these, anaphylactic issues later on in life with allergies.
Yeah, which is terrible. There's a lot of inflammation going on.
Yeah, they need to educate themselves first and foremost, find out what options they have. And I wish I could tell them, I wish I could just rattle it off and say, if you're living here, do this. If you're living there, do that. But it's so different in every jurisdiction.
Well, maybe we can have a doctor on here sometime, a pediatrician that believes in our bodies and how we can do things to protect ourselves as parents,
and
protect our kids.
The real controversy,
it's not black and white.
No, the real controversy is in the people that want to take the 30,000 foot view and say the entire population needs this. It's good for the entire population overall. And the people who are more on a personal level saying, yeah, but this isn't individualized for this person. There's no testing to make sure this person's safe. Is it the overall view, or is it the more personalized approach?
And it's sad to me because a lot of parents, like I said, they have to feel like it's a dirty little secret that you're investigating. Did my kid get injured by a vaccine? I truly believe, because Jack never had another vaccine after his 6 months, that he would have been much worse. I don't think he would have ever spoken a word. He didn't speak. He would say a word here and there. He had speech apraxia, where he'd learn a word, forget the word, learn the word. He wasn't really speaking sentences until he was 5. And I do believe that if in that time I would have went back and gotten him the next set of vaccinations, it would have just compounded the brain injury that he was getting. And so I want to be a voice for parents. I want them to be able to reach out to me and say, hey, what resources do you have? I mean, I'm not going to say you have to be pro-vax, anti-vax. If you're somewhere in the middle where you're like, I have to get vaccines because my husband believes in them, or I live in a state, I want to help us, bridge this gap, because it feels like it's black and white. You're either pro-vax, anti-vax. Where's that middle ground? Where can we start having conversations?
I love that. And you are such a proactive mom in terms of trying to think those things through and trying to find the best answer. So I think that's great to do that, without a doubt.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So there was something else that came up, shifting gears for a minute, in the news this week. And it's having to do with the death of Kurt Cobain. Did you hear about that?
I did. I heard that they're thinking it was a murder.
Yeah. So it's got to take a minute to step back and make sure that people know who's saying what and what the implications are with this. So what have you heard? Have you heard anything online? What's the social reaction to it?
What's funny is, like, us conspiracy theorists always thought that he probably was going to, anytime people that are suicided in Hollywood, in my thinking, I'm like, oh, okay, who was he about to expose? Right. What was about to happen? That's what I've always thought. So I don't know. I looked it up this morning because our son Jack actually brought it to us, and it just, once again, I think they're assuming he was probably going to out somebody on something.
Yeah. And it seems like there's the same sort of conspiracy thoughts about Chester Bennington and Chris
Bennington?
I don't know. I may be saying it wrong. I can't remember right now.
What is it?
What do you got? What do you got, Remy?
Chester Bedingfield? Oh, it is Bennington.
All right.
Chester Bennington.
So they've got the same sort of conspiracy theories around Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell with their deaths, and were they about to out somebody too? And then the same thing swirls around Robin Williams in Hollywood with his suicide.
Kate Spade.
Yeah.
There's so many suicides.
Yeah, it comes up quite a bit. Here's what my understanding is of what's going on with the Kurt Cobain thing. It's this independent group that has nothing to do with law enforcement. They just got access to the autopsy and the investigative files, and they've been going through it themselves. And they're raising concerns about the conclusions that were reached in the actual law enforcement investigation. They're saying things like his heroin level was too high for him to even be able to physically take his own life. He would have been passed out by that point. The blood splatter is wrong for a weapon of that nature. It should have been X, Y, and Z. That his hand placement and what's on his hands, the residue and things like that, it's incorrect for somebody if they were to have taken their own life. And so they're calling for a reopening of the investigation by the officials. But this isn't an official reinvestigation.
I think he was murdered.
I think a lot of people share that.
I think he was murdered. I think that the mafia that runs the world just decides we're going to off this person.
Yeah.
And, the one girl that was in, what's that movie? Clueless.
Right.
She died of pneumonia. And then somebody else, her fiance a week later was like, hey, I think she was murdered. And then he died of the same pneumonia a week later. I mean, Anne Heche, did you see that car accident?
Yeah, crazy.
Where she's driving down the street, hits something, and then she's flailing as they're taking her into the ambulance, saying that she died on scene. You're like,
right.
I see that video.
Right. And then there's the other guy that was in Fast and the Furious, right?
I know. That was so sad. He was so cute. Not cuter than you. Sorry. Chris, or no, I don't remember his name. I'm terrible with the name. Paul Walker. I remember we were up in Flagstaff for the Christmas North Pole experience, and they're like, Paul Walker died. I'm like, oh. And I heard that he was supposed to be doing some documentary on trafficking.
So yeah, that's that recurring theme. It keeps coming up, and it's hard for us sitting where we are to say we've seen any evidence of this common theme between these various celebrity deaths and high profile deaths. And it's just conspiracy theory. It's like, where does it come back? Because we haven't seen anything. You hear it, but it's hard.
You hear it all the time. The Titanic went down with all these bankers, and JP Morgan was supposed to be on there and he wasn't on there. You end up connecting all these dots, and then you end up just kind of going and having a bologna sandwich because there's nothing you can do.
Right. So
I don't really eat bologna. They don't have bologna lately anymore. I try to order bologna, and they send me this stuff that has these fat circles. I don't know. I try to look for bologna, and I don't like bologna. I don't like Oscar Mayer bologna.
This is the part of the podcast where Megan kind of goes off the rails.
I order that one brand. What's that one brand that has no nitrates? Talking about
Boar's Head.
Boar's Head. Because he gets headaches from nitrates, we figured out. And so I ordered Boar's Head. So if you get headaches, it might be your lunch meat or hot dog. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
That's nothing other than just a personal endorsement.
But it did. It helped you with your migraines.
No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, that goes back to the things that you look at proactively, trying to figure out the patterns and what causes what as an issue, and bringing it back to where we are.
Oscar
right now.
Mayer was injuring you.
Right. Well, I think that's basically everything that I had on our list that we were going to discuss today. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, guess what?
What?
Everyone, before it ends, should go to the Renaissance Festival. We're going to go.
Yeah.
We always go every year. It's so much fun.
Yeah. A lot of fun. Good time.
You can dress up. We're dressing you up as a Renaissance man.
This is news to me.
Jack is going as Martin Luther.
Okay.
The philosopher from the 1400s. And Skyla is going as
probably a 15-and-a-half-year-old
an elf
girl.
Some elf, cute elf. And then our hairstylist were picking out outfits that I wasn't approving of because they were very kind of boobylicious.
A little risque.
They want me to look good, but I'm like,
right.
Hey.
Well, that's fun. We'll do that this weekend.
Okay, so what would you say, one last thing, with all the things going on in the country, and, Trump saying today he's going to reveal UFOs, all this stuff, not to get into that. We try to focus on our family. Everybody for the most part wants safety, food, be healthy. What would you say people can do to keep their minds off of everything that's going on in the country?
It's so hard because it's so pervasive in the media, social media, and all of that. You asked earlier about what people can do as far as the Epstein files and things like that. And the thing with that big document dump and bringing up Trump with the aliens, what we can do is continue the pressure, because public pressure does cause things to happen. But in terms of what we can do for our families, it's go to church. It's read your Bible. It's talk to each other. It's get off the TV and off the devices.
Yeah.
It's find things like the Renaissance Festival to do as a family. Just
purposely, Jack has some app on his phone where he's earning points the more he stays off his phone.
Right.
I think I probably need to put that app on my phone.
Make dinner together.
Yeah. Pick recipes.
Do a barbecue.
Something fun.
Get out your smoker.
Yeah. Just live in your own little bubble while you can, even though you can't control everything outside of that bubble.
Right. Touch on the defensive driving giveaway.
So everybody, we have, if you go to our website, gerberinjurylaw.com, you will see a link to sign up yourself or your child age 15 and a half to 18, where you are going to get to use our scholarship, which we've already paid for, a defensive driving class. And it's all